Hello and welcome to your factoring expressions notes video. So we're going to just jump right into the lesson. We first have to understand what factoring means. Factoring is basically finding what number to multiply by to create an expression. Now that doesn't make any sense, but we're gonna take a look at that. So we're gonna write in that definition. So factoring is finding what number, remember I use the hashtag for the word number just to make it easier, to multiply by to create an expression. And I'm sorry my handwriting isn't the best. I have to get my hand out of the way so that you guys can write while I'm writing on this video. Okay, so I really like the steps for this because it has a good visual. This is kind of what we're going for, and then also they're just very clear in what we need to be doing. So the very first thing is it should be pretty easy. I hope it should be easy to just look at two numbers and to find the biggest number that can go into both of them. We've been doing it with simplifying fractions. Now we're doing it with the GCF. It's just a common skill that you should be able to know how to do. So that will make this lesson go by super easy and super fast if that is an easy skill for you to do. If it's not, it's still doable and it's a-okay. You just have to take a couple of steps to get to where we are. So here we go. First, you're going to find the GCF for all numbers. Sometimes you're going to have an expression. Remember, expressions don't have equal signs, okay? So sometimes you'll have an expression with 3 numbers and you'll need to find the GCF with all 3. But a lot of the times you're just going to need to factor with 2 numbers, okay? Okay, so that's the first step. So looking at our example right here, the first step is to find the GCF of 4 and 20. So a trick that I like to use is sometimes I like to make sure I look at the smallest number out of the two and say, okay, can the smallest number go into the biggest number? And if it's a yes, then that's the GCF. That's the biggest number that both of them can be divided by. If it doesn't work that way, then you can slowly start the process of looking at, like, does 2 go into it, right? Does 3 go into it? Things like that, like smaller numbers. Okay, the next step is that the GCF will be pulled out for each factor. So, for example, right, we know that the GCF is 4 for this expression. So what it's going to look like is you're going to pull the 4 out, and you're going to have parentheses. When you're doing factoring with GCF, you're going to always have parentheses. This is kind of what it's going to look like. So you're going to pull the 4 out, and then the GCF will go outside. So that's what the 4 is doing out there. We'll go outside of the parentheses. And the other factors will go inside. Now remember, factors are it's just a multiplication problem, right? So if we have like 4 times 1, 4 times 2, 4 times 3, right? These are factors. So when we're pulling the greatest common factor out, we're still left with some other things here. So what we're going to decide is we first have to look at the sign here. We have a plus sign, so we're gonna have a plus sign in the middle of the parentheses, and there's gonna be a number here and a number here. The numbers determine on what this looks like. So if we pulled a 4 out of 4, we are left with 1. So that means that 4 times 1 gives us that 4 right there. And then if we do 4 times 5, right? 4 times 5 is 20. So this right here, this expression is equal to this. So So these are equal to each other. It's looking a little bit different, and you're gonna, as you go further on in math, you'll see more parentheses, you'll see more factoring for sure. And so it's just getting into that process of pulling out the biggest number and then putting whatever is left inside of the parentheses. So let's go ahead. I know that may have seemed a little confusing, so let's go ahead and do this one out here. So let's look at 24 and 18. I personally know that 24 has factors of 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, right? There's a lot. So I do want to find the same factor that goes into 18, but it's also the biggest factor. So for example, I know that 2 can go into both of these numbers, but I actually know that there's a bigger number that can go into both, which is 6. So that's the very first step, is to come up with the GCF, okay? Now we're going to set up our little problem here with the parentheses. So the GCF of these two numbers is going to go on the outside of the parentheses. And then we're going to put whatever's left over in here to get to these numbers. So 6 times what gives us 24? Well, I know that 6 times 4 gives us 24. Okay, we have a plus sign here, so we're going to put that down into our factored expression. And then we have 6 times what gives us 18? That's 3. So this is our factored expression here. So these mean the same thing again, okay? And we'll learn a little bit later. It's called the distributive property, but it just means that you multiply whatever's on the outside of the parentheses into each of these, and you would end up with this, okay? So that is how you factor. Let's do a couple more together, and then I'll let you practice on your own. So again, the first step is to come up with the GCF. I'm so sorry for the blurriness. Here we go. Okay, it's a little better. Okay, I had to pause it, but here we go. All right, we've got 14 and 28. So I personally know that 7 can go into both of these. Now the problem is if you end up pulling out a number that's not the greatest common factor, you're going to have to do it over again because the factors in the middle of the parentheses are going to be bigger. So let me show you what I mean by that. If we pulled out a 7 here, we're left with a 2 and a 4. Now the problem is that the 2 and the 4 can also be factored out. A 2 can go into both of those, right? So this is not correct. You have to make sure you pull out the biggest number. Now because of that, 7 can go into both of them, but actually let's look at this 14 here. 14 can go into 28. 14 times 2 is 28. So we're going to actually pull out the GCF is 14 here. Okay, so then we're going to set up our factoring, right? It looks like this. So we want our GCF on the outside. So we found our GCF was 14. And then we're going to put parentheses. There's a plus sign there. Okay, so 14 times what gives me 14? Well, I know 14 times 1 gives me 14. 14 times what gives me 28? 14 times 2. So you know you've done it right when you have prime numbers in here or numbers that just can't be factored anymore. They don't have a common factor anymore. So that's how you know you've done it right. Okay, so there's that one. And then the last one that we're going to do together is 9 and 36. 9 plus 36. So if we factor out our GCF, once again, I'm going to explain this trick to you. You're going to look at the smallest number we have between the two, and we're going to say, okay, can 9 go into 36? And if that's a yes, then that means that that's the GCF. If it's a no, then you'll continue to find another greatest common factor. So the 9 can go into 36. So I'm going to pull the 9 out. There's a plus sign. Okay, Then I'm going to do 9 times what gives me 9? We got a 1. 9 times what gives me 36? We've got a 4. Okay, now these two can't be broken down anymore, so we know that we did that one right. Okay. Now, again, if you're struggling with finding the biggest number, I'm going to advise you to do the Venn diagram that we learned, right? Breaking these down just like that, right? And then we've got 12 and 3, 3 and 4. So just right off the bat, do you see how you have 2 3s that are similar? Right? If I use a different color, you might be able to see. So 1, 3 is similar. So if we take a look at our Venn diagram, we put a 3 in the middle, and then another 3 is similar. So we put another 3 in the middle, and then we would multiply those together, which would be 9. Sorry, that's kind of hard to see, but this again is a great way of finding the GCF, especially if the numbers are a little bit bigger and you're not sure. But again, even if you didn't pull out the GCF, you'll get something like this, and you know that you need to go a little bit more. So it kind of gives you a hint there. So that is factoring expressions using the GCF. What you're going to do now is do your pause and try. I'm going to have someone, whoever's running this video, I'm going to have them pause for 5 minutes. You guys are going to do your 2 pause and tries. Once you are done, just wait quietly, and then we can have people do it on the board or whatever you choose to do to go over the answers for the pause and try questions.